Hello everyone, my name is Hyan. Today I'm going to read the book Little House, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Farmer Boy, illustrated by Grant Williams. The Little House. Farmer Boy. School days. It was January in northern New York State. 67 years ago, snow lay deep everywhere. It loaded the bare limes of oaks and maples and beeches. It bent the green boughs of cedar and sunset down into drifts. Below, snow covered the field and the stone fences. Down a long road through the woods, a little boy trotted to school with his big brother, Royal, and his two sisters, Eliza, Jane, and Alice. Royal was 30 years old. Eliza Jane was 12, and Alice was 10. Almanzo was the youngest of all, and was first going to school. Because he was not quite 9 years old, he had to walk fast to keep up with others, and he had to carry a dinner pail. Royal ought to carry it, he said. He's bigger than I. Royal strutted ahead, big and manly in boots, and Eliza Jane said, "No, Manzo, it's your turn to carry it now, because you're the littlest. Eliza Jane was bossy. She always knew what was best to do, and she made Almanzo and Alice do it. Almanzo hurried behind Royal, and Alice hurried behind Eliza Jane in a deep hat made by bossiest runners. On each side of the soft snow was piled high. The road went down a long slope, then it crossed a little bridge and went on for a mile through frozen woods to the schoolhouse. The cold nipped Almanzo's eyelids and muffled his nose, but inside his good woolen clothes he was warm. They were all made from the wool of father's sheep. His underwear was creamy white, but mother had dyed the wool for his outside clothes, butternut hose, and dyed the thread for his coat, his long trouser. Then mother had woven it, and she had soaked it and strung the cloth into heavy, thick, full cloth. Not wind nor cold, nor even a drenching rain could go through the good, full cloth that mother made. For Almanzo, she had dyed fine wool as red as a cherry, and she had woven a soft, thin cloth. It was light and warm. The beautiful red Almanzo long brown pants buttoned to his red waist with a row of bright brass buttons all around his middle. The waist collar buttoned snugly up to his chin, and so did his long coat, a brown full cloth. Mother had made his cap of the same brown full cloth, with cozy ear flaps that tied under his chin, and his red mitten was on a string that went up the sleeves of his coat and across the back of his neck. That wasn't he couldn't lose them. Farmer Boy. He wore one pair of sock pulled snug over the legs of his underdrawers, and another pair outside the legs of his long brown hands, and he wore moccasin. They were actually like the moccasin that Indianas wore. Girls tied heavy veils over their faces when they went out in winter, but Almanzo was a boy, and his feet was out in frosty air. His cheeks were red as apple, and his nose were redder than a cherry. And after he had walked a mile and a half. He was glad to see the schoolhouse. It stood lonely in the frozen woods at the foot of Hardscramble Hill. Smoke was rising from the chimney, and the teacher had shoveled a path through a snowdrift to the door. 5 big boys were scuffling in the deep snow by path. Almanzo was frightened when he saw them. Royal pretended not to be afraid, but he was. They were the big boys from Hardscramble, said tamely, and everybody was afraid of them. They smashed little boys' sled for fun. They catch a little boy and swing him by his leg, then let him go headfirst into a deep snow. Sometimes they made 2 little boys fight each other, though the little boys didn't want to fight and begged to be left up. These boys were 16 or 17 years old, and they came to school only in the middle of the winter term. They came to thrash the teacher and break up the school. They boasted that no teacher could finish the winter term in that school, and no teacher ever had. This year, the teacher was a slim, pale young man. His name was Miss Crow. He was gentle and patient, and never whipped the little boys because they forgot how to spell a word. Almanzo felt sick inside when he thought how the big boys would beat Miss Court. Miss Court wasn't big enough to fight them. There was a hush in the schoolhouse, and you could hear the noise the big boys were making outside. The other pupils stood whispering together by the big stove in the middle of the room. Miss Court sat at his desk. On thin cheek rested on his slim hand, and he was reading a book. He looked up and said pleasantly, "Good morning." "Good morning." Royal and Jane and Alice answered him politely, but Almanzo did not say anything. He stood by the desk looking at Miss Court. Miss Court smiled at him. "Do you know I'm going home with you tonight?" Almanzo was too troubled to answer. "Yes," Miss Court said. "It's your father's turns." Every family in the district boarded the teacher for 2 weeks. He went from farm to farm till he had stayed 2 weeks at each one. Then he closed the school for that term. When he said that Miss Court rapped it on his desk with his ruler, it was time for school to begin. All the boys and girls went to their seats. The girls sat on the left side of the room and boys sat on the right side, with the big stove and wood box in the middle between them. The big ones sat in the back seats, the middle-sized ones in the middle seats, the little ones in front seats. All the seats were the same. The big boys could hardly get their knees under their desk, and the little boys couldn't rest their feet on the floor. Almanzo and Miles Lewis were primary class, so they sat in front seat and they had no desk. They had to hold their primers in their hands. Then Miss Court went to the window and tapped it on it. The big boy clattered into entire, cheering and loudly laughing. They bursted the door open with a big noise and swaggered it in. Big Bill Richard was their leader. He was almost as big as Almanzo's father. His feet were all as big as Almanzo's father's fists. He stamped the snow from his feet and noisily scrambled to a back seat. The 4 other boys made all noise they could. So, too, Miss Court did not say anything. No whispering was permitted in school, and no fidgeting. Everyone must be perfectly still and keep his eye fixed on his lesson. Almanzo and Miles held up their primers and tried not to swing their legs. Their legs grew so tired that they ached, dangling from the edge of the seat. Sometimes one leg would kick suddenly before Almanzo could stop it. Then he tried to pretend that nothing happened, but he could miss Court looking at him. In the back seat, the big boys whispered and stopped and slammed their books. Miss Court said gently, "A little less disturbance, please. 4 minutes, 0 quiet." Then they began again. They wanted Miss Court to try to punish